Ramadan is a month of selflessness, and I'm sure you've heard that. But for me, Ramadan is actually a month of selfishness, and I bet you haven't heard that. Let me explain. So I'm tasked for most of my life in looking after people with varying degrees of unwellness, and that includes mental unwellness as well. And in my spare time, I like to educate young people who also, unfortunately, as you know, have significant amounts of a mental unwellness. What I realized was that before talking about mental illness, we need to talk about mental wellness. And thus began my journey into the self. Now, we've all heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Abraham Maslow is considered the father of humanistic psychology. This is the branch of psychology that investigates human needs and tries to attain what, by knowing all the needs that humans have, we attain what Maslow aspired to, a comprehensive psychology. Maslow proposed that we have basic needs, biological needs, as animals, and we're driven to fulfill these, and you've all felt that when you're hungry, for instance. But beyond that, we're social animals, so we also have needs of esteem, belonging, love. Then we start on the journey of self-transcendence. For Maslow, this destination that we're hardwired to reach is self-actualization, the fulfillment of our higher purpose as individuals. This purpose is linked to what we're good at, so that we can make a distinct contribution to the human experiment just for the sake of it, rather than necessarily for self-gain. And too often, unfortunately, we neglect this, and this is what Maslow himself lamented. He said that perhaps human nature has been sold short because we've just looked at the basic needs of human nature and said, well, we're driven to be selfish. Okay, but we're jumping the gun. There's an added layer that we've learnt about recently through a branch called positive psychology, spearheaded by Martin Seligman. So this branch has demonstrated that there's an evidence also for an inborn desire to relate kindly with others. It's a desire to have good character. It's a desire to love others, to be kind, to help, and to give. This is where the I becomes the we. The paradox that by caring for others, we actually care for ourselves. And of course, Ramadan is full of this. So, as you know, that through the majority of human history, we actually had a need for that particular requirement, but it's actually in the agricultural, the industrial, the post-industrial eras that we've lost awareness of that need within us and become essentially selfish at times. Now, let me leap forward to what many will call the idea of the highest level of self-transcendence. The argument has it that also in our DNA is the need to leave the self altogether. This higher self-transcendence is when we realize our smallness as individuals by contrasting ourselves with the vastness of great things. A simple example is awe, which we've all felt at some point. Have you ever looked out over the sea and looked and considered its vastness? Have you stood by the shore of a lake and looked at the mountains that frame the lake and just wondered? Have you ever stood at the top of a mountain, looked out over the horizon and just felt something magnificent? Or have you looked up at space and just wondered at the stars and their distance? Transcendental experiences have been found to be associated with elation, with feelings of contentedness, inspiration, love, and even trust. We all have a sense of how distant the stars are and how vast space is. Imagine then the feeling that comes when you connect with something greater than all of that. The Quran teaches us وَسِعَ كُرْسِيُّهُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, that even the throne of God transcends over not just the earth but all of the heavens as well. Now, another name of one of the names of God, one of his divine names, is Al-Wasi', the vast. In our prayers, we throw our faces to the ground and feel our humility and insignificance and exclaim, Subhana Rabbil A'la. I marvel at you, my Lord, the Most High. Isn't that an invitation for awe? In the Quran, God tells us, God tells Prophet Muhammad actually, that, peace be upon him, that إذا سئل عبادي عني فإني إذا سئلك عبادي عني فإني قريب, that when my devotees ask you about me, tell them I am nearby. One could wonder, however, does God come to us by remembering him, or actually is something of ourselves, something of our identity, reaching him? After all, we are taught in the Hadith literature that when we make mention of God, our name is mentioned in his presence. So through Ramadan, we deny our biological selves. And God tells us in the Quran that so did previous traditions. And thereby we attain God consciousness. Thereby we reach high and transcend. Now isn't that a happy thought?